I completely spaced out listening to the background music of this game while I was waiting for the ad to be over. So I'm sorry about that. But welcome in, everyone. Let's continue from where we left off the last time we played. Because I was not expecting my boyfriend to come home on Friday. At least not that early. And we got interrupted. But is that my fault too? I guess it's my fault too because I stopped. But I don't like streaming when he's here, so it's okay. At the house, your host gave you space to finish sorting your things, as a pretense anyway. In reality, you had sensitive feelings to sort through. Why do I have sensitive feelings to sort through? You tugged clothes from the suitcase in a total haze. It was dark outside, and indoors the artificial lighting blurred around the corners of your eyes. Eventually, your phone lit up repeatedly. Plucking it off the side table where it had been charging, you checked to see what came in. Is it Cove? Is my best friend Cove messaging me? It was the promised group chat. Ew. Baxter. Baxter had messaged you, but also Miranda and Terry. Jude and Scott could see it as well, of course. They were the original members. Hello, welcome to the planning chat all. This is Baxter. Thank you again for assisting with the wedding prep. Our first meeting is tomorrow at 9 a.m. Also, sorry for the background noise. My dog decided that he wanted to eat right now. And I can't stop him. You can call or text if anything comes up or if that appointment isn't possible. See you soon. The short stream of text ended with the copy-paste of the exact address in his office, for his office. It was pleasantly detached, as you'd expect from a stranger you met briefly once and in the context of him providing a service for monetary compensation. Too bad that wasn't the relationship he had. It could be ignored, but not erased. You hadn't even tried. You kept his number, and after all this time, it had appeared again. Ooh. Why? Why am I struggling? Baxter's contact hadn't changed. It was the exact same one you'd gotten in the summer of 2016. Oh my god, 2016 was 10 years ago. Ew. Ew. You still had a history together, and it was 5 years ago that this is taking place 5 years from 2016. How far away is that? I have to do some quick maths. 2021? How old was I in 2021? I was 23. Oh, Lord. Still. 2016. Because I was 18 in 2016. Imagine a 10-year reunion, and I'm still holding on to this man. Couldn't be me. Actually, it is me. It's me, IRL. I have a hard time letting go of things. You still had a history together. Your fingers began to move before your conscious mind caught up with what was happening. You opened the old logs. The old logs? The last time Baxter had texted you personally was 5 years ago. Seeing the most recent message was stinging. What did it say? Leave me alone, bitch? Probably is what it said. It was during that absolutely unexpected trip to the mountain he let you join in on. I'm downstairs. The final line he ever sent. We didn't text after that? I mean, I guess nah. We could see each other in person. But even if I could still see my friends in person, I would text them. That had been quite the night. Baxter had snuck out the lobby and let you share in a private moment. For a time, it was as if you and him were the only two people in the world. You'd felt like you'd seen who he really was in the light of the fireplace. It was so romantic. If you were being entirely honest, you hoped to be close with him again. It hurt so much because the truth was you still wanted to be with Baxter. I mean, I'm definitely picking that one, but let's read the rest. Being reunited was an unbelievable chance. You had some optimism for where it'd go. Getting to speak with him hadn't changed anything. You were just sad. Things were different now. You'd focused on being entirely professional around him. You weren't sure what to think or how to feel about Baxter anymore. We're still in love with this freak. You let out a long, slow breath and dropped the phone. I don't know if we're gonna be able to get back together with him. That's another story. But we're in it for the long haul. It was impossible to get away from the black and white boy in your memories, or the person who currently existed. An appointment was set to see him in less than 12 hours. He was gone, and he was there. Baxter Ward was simply inexorable, no, inexorable, inexorable? I've never seen this word. Hold on. I need to know how to say this. And you can hear me typing like an old lady. If you don't get out of my face, AI mode. Inexorable. Okay. Baxter Ward was simply an inexorable part of your life. You called your big sister to talk about what happened. You called Cove to let him know what was going on. Is Cove a part of this? Is he in the group chat? You decided to stop thinking about this for now. We gotta call Liz. We gotta call big sis Liz. From an entirely abandoned contact to one of your most frequently used numbers, you hit Liz's name on your phone. Big sisters were made for moments like these. She gonna talk shit? Is she gonna call him an emo kid again? There was plenty to think about to pass the seconds as the dial tone played. How late is it? She wouldn't be attending the wedding. Miranda was your friend, only an acquaintance of hers, and she'd never even met Jude or Scott in person. Liz had no idea what was going on over here and never would unless you said so. And so, you would. Your screen changed, she answered. Hey, bro. What a sound for sore ears, even if she came right out of the gate with teasing you. You survived your journey. That's good to know. That's right. Hi, Liz. She laughed and you could easily imagine her tossing her head back. Well, how's it going? The pleasantry was a more complicated question than she knew. It was going, that was for sure, but you got straight to the core point. Jude and Scott, the couple I'm helping, hired a wedding planner. It is Baxter Ward. And then your sister's gonna be like, am I supposed to know who that is? I don't think about him. You expressed as much of your fraught emotions as possible into this strained statement. Her answer was a single flat word. Who? Probably. See? Who? Baxter, the guy who stayed in the mean, not grandparents condo. I dated him one summer, remember? The monochrome man? The Victorian emo boy, Pepe Le Pew, you know. Baxter Ward, the super formal tourist who stayed on our street one year. He took me, you know what? He took me on a trip to the mountains. You threatened to call the police. I would say I dated him one summer, but the Victorian emo boy, that loser? He's a wedding planner now? Yes. She processed this over a silent minute and concluded it was acceptable. Well, I guess who else would want to spend their time absorbed in the fanciest of life events than a guy who acted like every day was a grand ball? Are you gonna be okay? It's been a long time, but there's no deadline for getting over clowns like him. Or it would be more appropriate to say mimes, because of the black and white look. A snort shot out of her face. You knew calling her was a good idea. I was making fun of him. I just said I wanted this man back, and now we're bullying him. Thanks. I think I'll be fine, but he isn't wearing black and white. Alright. I now regret not getting an invitation to that wedding. I ought to be there for this. It would have been nice to have you around. Yes, it would. You two siblings spent more time chatting, but eventually had to wrap things up. You had an early morning on the horizon. After a playful bye, little brother, Liz ended the call. You placed the phone down for good. It had been tempting to make another call, but you needed to get into bed. Rest was the priority. It had been an eventful enough day already. You finished your trip there. You came face to face with Baxter Ward after 5 years, and the real work hadn't even started yet. At 8:45 the next morning, the wedding team of 5 crowded into Baxter's office, and crowded was the word. 5. Yes, that is, if you can do math correctly, that's the amount. The first challenge your team faced was where exactly to sit. A single faux leather couch and scattered office chairs that went with desks were the available options. Oh, so you don't own the joint, Baxter? I see. Okay. This place was not made for a crew of people, but considering it normally hosted couples, you couldn't complain. Scott, Jude, and Miranda sat in a row, snug on the couch like peas in a pod. Randy's legs were crossed over the cushion, so there was room for Terry on the ottoman. You just stood, he sat in the armrest, he stole one of the desk chairs and placed it by the couch. Of course I'm taking one of the desk chairs. Baxter didn't need 3 of those for himself, and you'd move it back when you were done. It was fine. The planner hadn't been there to see the groggy game of musical chairs. You were still waiting for him even then. Scott stared at the time on his phone, flinching at every minute closer to 9. Jude squished against him and rubbed his fiancée's back. As welcoming as the two had been, almost walking on eggshells to make sure nothing felt troubling, you were still aware how tight the deadline was. They had to be feeling the pressure. Then when the clock struck 9, there was a knock on the door. Confused glances ebbed from Miranda's end of the couch down to your side, each person wondering if everybody else heard that. Who's there? The door swung wide open in response. Good morning, everyone. There he was, shoes shiny, suit fresh pressed, hair souped just so, with not a strand out of place, grin granite sharp. He looked even more self-possessed than at the restaurant. Obviously, this Baxter Ward was perfectly capable of functioning before noon. The overly grand way of speaking, the difficulty with mornings, the monochrome style, the desire to befriend everyone he met, none of his most recognizable characteristics seemed to have lasted. Ooh. It's as if it wasn't even him. Or maybe he grew up because it's been 5 years and you're not children. I mean, we were adults technically back then too. But 18 is different than 23. At least it should be. It should be. Hey. Sup? Good morning. Morning, Baxter. You waved. You just sat there quietly. Hello. Hi. What do I say? I don't want to exclaim at him, but I do want to say hello. Hi. Hi is nice. Hello. Thank you for coming. Scott scrambled to hide his phone with one hand and used the other to keep from losing his glasses in the haste. And something happened. Baxter's smile curved playfully, and his eyes narrowed. You blinked rapidly, almost expecting white streaks to materialize in his hair. This is my office? There's few other places I could go. Well, that attitude was familiar at least. Flawlessly poised, Baxter strode to the other half of the room and took a seat in the rolling office chair opposite the couch. He used the tips of his feet to smoothly twist the chair's position so that it faced the group completely. No comment was made on the chair you'd commandeered. And why would he have something to say? I wish you would. I wish you would have something to say about the chair I picked. Where else I'm gonna sit? Now. Sorry. Now, we know why we're here. I believe we should begin. Nods and low murmurs of agreement followed, until the entire room started from a sudden shout. Terry smacked himself against the side of his head. Oh, wait! All eyes were on him. Terry beamed, keeping his attention squarely on Baxter. Since you've missed everything, I've gotta tell you that I'm a guy. Thank you for sharing that with us, with the class, Terry. I mean, he would need to know that, but still, it was the fact that He slapped himself on the side of his face just to like be like, "Oh, I forgot." Of course, I understand. Thank you for talking about that with me. Cool. He sprung forward on the footstool. And I use a Y in Terry, not an I. Then Terry settled down for the second rapid interjection. He rolled a hand through the air as if to say, "Carry on." "I will remember that." Baxter retrieved a notepad and pen from his inner jacket pocket. "So, normally I'd love to hear as much about you two as you're willing to share. However, I'm aware we have a schedule to keep to. I'll stick to what's most relevant to the tasks at hand. I will still need to ask many questions. You'll need to bear with me. It's important to have all the specifics and make certain we're on the same page. I'd never want to simply assume I know what you want. Instead, I want you to say for yourselves what your hopes and plans and ideas are." "I get what you mean. We've made that mistake before." Scott messed with his ponytail. He chuckled at some private thought. It perked Baxter's smile. There was an interest beyond mere polite attention. "Oh?" The little hint to continue didn't go unheard. Scott was just that kind of person. If there was an opening to talk, he would fill it gladly. When we were still long distance, actually starting from before we were even dating, I'd always go on about getting my nose pierced. At least once a year ever since I knew him, I'd talk it up to Jude how this time I was actually going to do it. Eventually, Jude stopped being convinced that I was going to do it on my own. He told me if I did seriously get one, he'd do it too, and then we could match. I did, and he did, separately in other states. And you can see for yourself, we had different ideas of what getting a gold nose ring meant. Yep, it was as plain as the noses on their faces. Jude had a gold horseshoe in his septum. Meanwhile, Scott had 2 golden hoops in one nostril. Now we have almost matching nose rings. Scott clapped his palms against his knees, aiming to tell on that note. Jude's bellowing laugh followed immediately. "I like our almost matching nose rings. And hey, now we've got real matching rings." "Oh, did they get matching engagement rings?" He flexed his left hand, showing off the distinct black band. The 2 men had identical engagement rings, and there it is. Unable to resist the temptation, Scott filled Jude's open hand with his own. So cute. Jude clasped him back. They were a delightful couple. Even a pro like Baxter could see it. "That is absolutely charming. Not to mention a good reminder that even if something doesn't go exactly as planned, that doesn't mean it's all bad. But of course, I'll do what I can to make the day everything you're dreaming of." He clicked the pen out. "To start off, have we thought of possible surnames? Are either of you going to take the other's, use hyphenation, not make any changes, or so on?" "Yeah, I'm gonna have Scott's last name, Adam." "Mr. and Mr. Adam it is." Baxter quietly vocalized the official name while jotting down his first note of the session. "And what do we have finished already?" "A venue and food, and my cousin is photographer, so that's covered. It's a caterer that's what we have. There's no wedding cake. Or any desserts, actually." Not that we need it. Who's gonna starve without cake?" "Cove Holden." Why am I thinking of Cove Holden? Thank goodness he wasn't there to listen to such blasphemy. Almost anything's technically needed. Almost nothing. Where did I get anything? Not me combining words again. Almost anything. Almost nothing is technically needed to be married legally, but if we can have it, why shouldn't we? Sure, if there's any time. They went back and forth, trading comments and remembering points the others hadn't, huddled close on the couch. It was like watching a meeting between 2 kings and their semi-villainous advisor. Why is he villainous? Unfortunately, in that moment, it was comparable to kings coming from different countries rather than ones ruling together. Their approaches were not the same. The final guest list is done. Invitations were already sent. We've got speakers for music. There's no live band or DJ, just a playlist, and the ceremony and reception take place in one room. We have a runner and a podium for the ceremony. The location comes with chairs and tables, but there aren't a lot of decorations done. Leaning close and listening closer, Baxter pressed 2 fingers into his chin. Do you know what you will be wearing? Scott's face ping-ponged between his planner and fiancé. He stalled. We've got suits. Suits we already own, he means. It's nothing special. We haven't bought or rented anything for the wedding, but what we have would work if there's no other way. I see. Baxter himself paused there, considering. Please tell me I don't have the hiccups. A picture was beginning to form in his mind. Are there any traditions or extra touches you'd like to include in either the ceremony or reception? I don't know. 5 minutes in, and Scott was already sighing. He pressed his glasses higher on his face. If you couldn't tell, we haven't gotten far enough to consider anything extra. We're short on major parts still. The office chair creaked as Baxter rested against it. The gesture was disarming, physically pulling back from the non-stop questioning. First, let me say what you've already taken care of is commendable. My job is going to be far easier. Jude and Scott were absolutely flattered. Someone in Baxter's position had good things to say about the situation. With how much they'd put in their big day, getting some positive feedback must have been a real treat. They smiled shyly to one another. I'd like you to get me the contact info for the venue and caterer when you can. I'll put it in the group chat. Excellent. He got his meeting off on the right foot, intentionally so. Baxter pivoted to make his next move. Second, there should be space to finish multiple tasks with the time we have and the amount of people who can assist. So let's prioritize and delegate. Desserts and decorations are foremost. Then only if there's room would anything else be done. Possibly selecting new clothes for the occasion is that what I'm hearing? Yes. Sure. Throughout the extended interview, you, Terry, and Miranda had been silent. Scott and Jude might very well have forgotten you were in the room. At that point, your job was to listen. You'd only act once decisions were ready to be put into action. But watching Baxter work as a professional planner was a surreal experience. He seriously did look like he knew what he was doing. He was asking the right questions, reading the room. Baxter's skills had grown considerably since helping with Miranda's birthday party. We'd already got stuff we're working on at our place. We're making guest favors. No clue where we'd get cake. Me neither. I tried, but how do I know if they're any good at it? Who orders a wedding cake before their wedding? What? What kind of stupid ass... Being able to make other desserts doesn't mean you can do that decently. That's why you go to bakeries or caterers that you trust. And you have tastings. I wanna go cake tasting. I don't know why I wanna go cake tasting. I'm gonna pick vanilla. Maybe I'll pick a lemon. It doesn't matter. I'm not getting married. If you're willing to take recommendations, I am acquainted with the baker. Xavier! You guys remember Xavier from, what's his name? Dexter? Derek. From Derek's, little thing that we did. The bakery scene. I remember Xavier. Everybody knows Xavier. Xavier comes highly recommended. My dog. By my previous clients, and I can vouch for them personally. Did you get your wedding cake from them? What a question. Scott meant it with a complete sincerity. Scott, what the fuck, man? He has no ring. Oh, so... Oh, that's soft. No. My heart. It was so precious. I'm unmarried at the moment. Entirely single, in fact. But I would hire them for my own if I didn't have the occasion. You didn't know what the perception was of unwed wedding planners. Baxter wasn't flustered by the circumstances regardless. He wasn't seeing anyone. Oh my gosh. The delusion. The delusion of my character. He chuckled at him amiably. It smoothed the mild bump right over. Scott hadn't even registered a pitfall that was barely avoided. He was getting excited. Things were finally coming along. All right, we'll go there. What are we gonna get? We can discuss it. Yeah, how long is it gonna take? Can we order today? The pressure Baxter unintentionally released was layered on extra thick with Jude's cut to the finish take on the bakery. That is possible. Since time is of the essence, you wouldn't be able to do a tasting session. No, I want a taste cake. That means you'll have to trust the flavors will be to your liking. What if it's coconut? I will not eat a coconut cake. Getting common or familiar options would be my suggestion, but you can certainly try something more unique if your heart is set on it. Are there any allergies we need to consider? Yeah, coconut. I don't like coconut. There's a lot of cake flavors I don't like, actually. I like vanilla and lemon. Those are my cake flavors. No, that's whatever. Get chocolate and some vanilla. What do you mean, and some vanilla? Brother, do you know how a cake works? It's not cupcakes. It's a cake. In this case, Baxter didn't accept the first answer he received. Baxter's keen eyes went to Jude's other half for his second opinion. Scott gulped. I don't know what else to pick off the top of my head. We can think a little longer. Baxter kept his tone approachable, harmless. He was having to double as a therapist, gently coaxing clients to speak their mind. No. I really don't know. We should get chocolate and vanilla. Everybody will like that. You're gonna get 2 cakes? You know how expensive a wedding cake is? You know how expensive 2 wedding cakes are? My God. Excuse me. That's fine. That's a classic. Chocolate and vanilla. What is happening here? I feel like I don't know what's happening. The note was taken down. Baxter pressed firmly into the paper at one point. A period. Do you have any design notes? Normally, they'd be done with a baker, but again, limited schedule. I imagine you'd want to sit down and get acquainted with someone new. You don't want to, okay. We can have the details prepared ahead of time to expedite the process. What designing does a cake need? Jude, do you not know anything? Ugh. Baxter, I hope you're charging them by the second. I hope you're charging them by the second, because what do you mean? What design does a cake need? What do you want it to look like, my guy? That depends on you. Cakes can come in about any style you can imagine, and more styles you'd never think of on your own. Scott almost leapt from his seat over the topic. Maybe he would have if he wasn't so pressed in on all the sides. It's true. I saw a lot of pictures when looking at bakeries. They can be so cool. People make these 3D carved cakes into shapes of things. And I'm being excited about some things. It doesn't look like cake at all. Okay. Well, that's not a wedding cake. I mean, it could be, I guess. But, like, a traditional wedding cake is not all that. It's not all that. That's going to be so expensive. You guys, aren't y'all trying to save money? There were a few opportunities in life you could justify spending a lot of money on an incredible cake. The prospect of that time being now had Scott more excited about the planning than anything else so far. You can even get a cake that's a car. Seriously, a car. With working headlights and everything. Jude loved his car more than me some days. Only a few weeks out of the year. You get me most of the time. Okay, Jude. Just because you look like Miranda doesn't mean that you get the cuteness pass. You're pissing me off, brother. They shared a laugh. The meeting was more friendly, was becoming more friendly, more fun. The two could enjoy the process past all the stress of it, except nothing not happening. But building a cake car isn't gonna work. No one could do it. Unfortunately, Jude was correct on that count. Baxter's recommended baker had to be good. However, humans could only do so much. A custom confection vehicle, in a matter of days with no prior notice, was asking for there to be no cake at all. Oh my god, how many days is the wedding in? A week? Baxter, you better be charging them. This better be $1 million wedding. Okay? In fact, it made baking cupcakes the night before an event look like a piece of cake. Perhaps a compromise is in order. For example, a typical tiered cake with some model decorations. Who's gonna notice? Baxter lowered his pen. The positive momentum had been lost. This doesn't need to be wrapped up in under a stressful timeline. However, there is room to still have what you actually want. I want a cake that you can eat. I want that too. It doesn't need to be fancy stuff. We're not fancy people. I see. The future Adams might not have been particularly prissy, but as a bona fide fancy man himself, Baxter was personally insulted by the repeated dismissiveness of all formalities. At least he would have been 5 years ago. You need to stop bringing up the past. You had no idea what he was thinking now. His expression was inscrutable. It was only clear that he was continuing to pay close attention. Excuse me. Well, I won't pressure you to do more than you'd like, but I think we should at least pick a couple of words to denote the overall theme. What's the theme? Gay? It's just two men getting married. There's no theme. Traditional, vintage, modern, and such. That's not the theme. Finished and not ugly. Exactly, that's the theme. Jude wouldn't bite no more how appetizing the treat. What? Jude wouldn't bite no more how appetizing the treat. Okay. Baxter reevaluated his approach. Those should go without saying with this baker. If it doesn't matter in particular to you, that isn't a problem. Scott, do you have a preference? I'd want something that seems modern. Old-fashioned cakes are not my style. Or in less diplomatic terms, the sight of a frou-frou buttercream piping might have made him break out in hives, despite the lack of allergies. What you got against buttercream? I love buttercream. Absolutely, that's the approach. What's the actual presentation? Simplistic, elegant, floral, beachy? Why does his neck look so long? I'm looking at Baxter right now. Like, has his neck always been that long? Have I mentioned that before? I don't hate the art style. I'm just saying. His neck looked a little bit long. Could it be simple and elegant? Of course it can be simple and elegant. Scott thoughtfully scratched the stubble along his jaw as his gaze wandered. The combination of descriptors was one of those possibilities he couldn't even imagine, apparently. Certainly. Then that, right? Hold on. I am going to adjust the music in the game. So I want you guys to be able to hear the music too. And the voice acting. And I feel like it wasn't coming across. So if this is too loud now, I'm sorry. Let me know. Then that, right? He glanced at Jude instinctively. As dismissive as Jude had been about the cake, Scott remained hopeful his partner would feel positive about it. Perfect, Scott. Jude meant it. Even if it wasn't what Scott had wanted, it was enough. I'm glad you think so. In that case, since you've been thinking of keeping it simple and prioritizing flexibility, I could visit the bakery for you to make the request. You have other obligations to take care of, I imagine? I can confirm the budget through the text when I get a quote. Do you know the amount of tiers you'd want? You tell us. You've seen how big our party is. I can certainly give my take. For a wedding of your size, I would suggest 3 tiers at least. Done, he said. That's good. We're gonna have a wedding cake. Compared to how enthusiastic Scott started at the outset of the topic, the conclusion was like a cake that didn't get baking powder mixed in the batter. Flat. Still, it seemed any cake would do, literally and metaphorically. Jude didn't care and Scott wouldn't push it. Baxter's planning abilities had been tested there, and only one who came out fully satisfied was Jude. I believe I know everything I need at the moment. I can put in that order for you today. Thank you so much for your help. But somebody should go with you to be sure. I can do it. Will the rest of you be good at making flavors? Making favors? Not flavors, favors. Probably. Amazingly, the single word response, still said with a shrug, didn't fill Scott with confidence. Maybe someone else should go to the bakery. Jude? Who's Jude? Oh, him. I've been looking at his name this whole time. Like, who's Jude? He can handle it. We've got a planner so he can do things, and we can do other things. The frisson of disagreement didn't frazzle Mr. Ward. He calmly interjected with a suggestion. If the two of you are the most informed about the guest's favors, then someone who doesn't know the process as well could attend the bakery with me. Jude is right, you are lucky to have others here to assist, and it isn't me alone. We can share the responsibilities. Oh no, Baxter didn't notice the implications of what he was saying. Jude took the uninviable position of filling him in. The only person who has no idea what is happening is Princeton. That cordial expression Baxter had so persistently maintained dropped immediately. His gaze darted to you for a single instant. Ooh, he looks salty as hell. It was the first time he acknowledged your presence in the room the entire morning. Why does he look like he smelled something bad when he heard my name? Just fix your face. He's so rude, babes. We're getting back together. What are you doing? Oh. Baxter blinked, and it reset the position of his eyes back on his clients. The smile returned as well, with nothing happened. That's up to the rest of you to decide, naturally. I can work with your circumstances. It doesn't have to be Princeton. Anyone can do it, if they want to. That was not the direction you expected or wanted it to go, in either way. Being singled out as the best person on the team to have one-on-one time with a planner and having that fact be doubted because of the history you had. Having to see him at all and having to hear his voice was one thing, and being required to work in a group towards the same goal was another. Oh my gosh, so dramatic. So dramatic, just do it. But being entirely alone with Baxter was a cruel joke. Why did any of this happen? It was as if the world itself enjoyed tormenting you. Quickly before Terry and Randy could swoop in to tackle the assignment, you spoke out. It's fine. If that's what would be easiest, that's what we should do. Really? Thank you very much. Wait, yeah, you do owe me. You owe me as much as how much you're paying for Baxter. And it better be a milli. Miranda kept her mouth shut on the matter, only offering an understanding smile. Terry saluted you for your service in the line of fire. Baxter grinned past you in an entirely artificial way. Okay. Okay. He hates me. Why does he hate me? I didn't do anything to him. It's because I kept texting him. It's probably because I kept texting him. It's settled. A few more minor details were laid out before the end of the meeting was officially called. You had to exit the building in one group and then split off in the parking lot. The main team of Scott, June, Miranda, and Terry was going to spend the entire afternoon of guest favors, while your branch had the task of arranging a cake. Baxter directed the way to go and separated from the crowd first. You had to give fast farewells before catching up with your partner for the operation. Baxter led you back to the back lot of the Baxter led you to the back of the lot and approached what you assumed was his car. Somehow, as you got closer to it, you could have guessed it was Baxter's. It was sparkling white. Ooh. Not a single scratch, scuff, or speck of dirt. Once the door was open, the interior, however, was floor-to-ceiling black, of course. Of course. Oh, it's got sunroofs, too? Okay, I see you. I see you, my guy. All black leather interior. Black and white, another coincidence, perhaps? Or were there too many of those at this point for it to be a happenstance? Baxter eased the seatbelt across his chest and addressed his passenger, you. It was discomforting. He'd been so committed to maintaining a defined distance. When it was no longer an option, he didn't touch on the change. Instead, he behaved as if he was always an employee in your service. Welcome to my vehicle. Please change the temperature and air direction to your liking. The radio works. I'll leave it off, but of course you can put it on some music if you want. Baxter's face was kept straight ahead, eyes toward the road, and he hadn't even started driving yet. How professional. You could watch him as much as you wanted, right up close. You did. Stop! The beauty mark on his neck was close enough to touch. Don't. That was him, Baxter Ward. It was you and Baxter sitting alone in the car after 5 years and a promise that you'd never see each other again. And he wasn't going to acknowledge even a hint of that on his own. You were certain of it. Am I allowed to speak to you, or is it forbidden? He murmured. Look, we have to talk. Can we talk? You didn't need to make a scene. It was a relief that he didn't want to comfort you in the past. It was a relief that he didn't want to confront you with the past. Am I allowed to speak, or is it forbidden? It depends. It depends on what you like to discuss. No. I can endeavor to help with any part of the planning, but unfortunately my base of knowledge is limited to specific areas. Well, that was a pleasant way to outright reject talking about anything actually important. What's the baker like? Hey, when do people normally order wedding cake? I just can't stand you. I just missed you. Forget it. This is so funny. I'm getting like secondhand embarrassment though. Or would it be first-hand embarrassment since this is my character? What's the baker like? I can't stand you. His grip's hanging around. Oh, his voice got deep. I understand. The world passed in a blur as you stared blankly out the window. You didn't want to be there. You just don't want this to be happening. Those thoughts and other similar feelings swirled in your head on a loop. Why didn't I tell him I missed him? I meant it though. I can't stand him. I can't. It was a miserable purgatory of a drive. You only managed to pull yourself together when Baxter pulled into a parking lot. Suddenly, you were in the heart of Prism Vista City. You'd arrived. A pastel pink sign plastered across the top of one of the buildings read, Zake Bakery, in big, bold letters. A small cursive underneath said, Cake Designs by Xavier. Baxter approached without wasting a second. A tinkling bell jingled as Baxter opened the door. He held it out for you. Being in a rush didn't mean being impolite, apparently. You joined him. The designs on the sign accurately alluded to what was to come. The whole bakery was decked out in soft pinks and creams. Each dessert in the neat little rows was delightfully delicate. If the taste matched the presentation, they must be incredible. Warm air perfumed with spices like cinnamon and nutmeg surrounded you completely. What a tonal shift. The sound of the bell summoned someone from the back. Clad in a simple apron with far from basic makeup on and a stylish updo, the employee smiled brightly. At the risk of being presumptuous, you guessed that was Xavier. Their whole look was made to fit with the overall aesthetic. Even the flowers and the flowing hair looked as if they were plucked right off of a wedding cake. She's got an accent. What? Have they always had an accent? Baxter, welcome. Always a pleasure. Is this a new client? Not quite. I do have a job for you. This is Princeton, a friend of my latest couple. He is here to assist with the preparation of the event. The lovebirds are busy with tasks of equal importance, you see. It was almost astounding how much more natural he spoke when it was to anyone other than you. Though this being about his work might have helped, Baxter was back in his element. Princeton, this is Xavier. They are the head baker and cake artist of this fine establishment. Thanks for coming in. It's nice to meet you. Xavier's eyes sparkled. At first glance, the color seemed a pale brown, but the more you looked, the more you caught shades of purple. Hey! So, what exactly can I do for you, or your clients, rather? To be honest, it's a pinch unusual to have even one person getting married come to commission their wedding cake. These are unusual circumstances. Baxter confessed that I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. I'm having difficulty reading today. As all days. But still. Okay. Let's continue. Baxter confessed that much with his eyes closed. When he had enough shamelessness to look Xavier directly in the face, the inherent charm of Baxter's grin had been pushed to its absolute limit. Could you possibly make a 3-tier cake that is simple yet elegant and modern in about 3 days? 3 days? Ain't no way in hell. Xavier's perfectly painted lips popped open. Not a word came out of them, but it wasn't as if they were given a chance to object. There were more. And the schedule is including today. The wedding is Saturday afternoon. No, say no. Say no. You rightfully should say no. Baxter rolled his wrist, smoothly recounting each of the points set during the initial planning meeting. If he stated it as a predetermined fact, surely that meant it'd become real. For flavors, they'd like chocolate and vanilla, separate for 2 of the tiers, and in combination for 1. They didn't discuss that, but I guess you know what you're doing. They finally cut him off, folding their arms definitely. Defiantly, right? Hold on. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Really? I would say that's fairly important. Not if I can't do the order. Oh, Xavier. No need to worry. I trust in your abilities immensely. There was a scoff. Baxter kindly ignored it. Besides, there are worse arrangements. Are there? And an example of that would be? Well, entirely theoretically, you could have to prepare desserts for a full-scale party the night before the event. You blinked. Did Baxter just reference when you worked together to throw a party for Miranda? The shared memories had played about your own mind lately, especially since you were handling event desserts together again. But he made his interest in reminiscing known. There was none. And yet, there he went, chuckling heedlessly and running a hand through his hair. I am sympathetic to this being a difficult task. As present as my witness, I did swear to never take for granted the effort it takes to provide decorated and delicious treats under pressure. We were only able to start baking 3 dozen cupcakes at a time when many people would be going to bed. Baxter glanced at your face, his eyes sparkling with affection. Oh? Now you like me? Now I can talk to you? You weren't mistaken. He was talking about the time you were dating, and now he acknowledged you directly in his storytelling. You did what with who? I thought he was here because of your clients. Xavier's disbelief over the words rivaled your own, except for entirely different reasons. They batted their hand encouragingly for more details. Baxter schooled his coyness into a more level-headed smile at being questioned. Oh my gosh. And you suddenly understood. He knew Xavier, he knew you. The clients he didn't know weren't there. For a moment, Baxter had forgotten his professional self. It wasn't Baxter's normal state to wall you out completely. That was a concerted effort. One that went against his real preference. His first instinct was to be amicable towards you. It was getting hard to be unhappy with him. That made the mess worse. Was that better or worse than him genuinely not caring? You were slightly relieved. It wasn't just you who still cared. Not me giggling. Baxter and I have quite the history. It's all true. We were up into the dead of night frosting those cupcakes. The cupcakes were only half of it. Did you know he drank underage? Why are we throwing him under the bus? I've known Baxter since his black and white phase. You looked away from him. You stared at him intently. I'm gonna pick this one. Xavier's eyes widened and so did their smile. Can you elaborate on the story? But that tangent was stopped short by the demure Let's not get too distracted. Oh, now my mouth whistling by itself. While 3 days is more than a single night, it is a tight deadline regardless. It would be rude to take up any more of your time than necessary. Baxter spoke while continuously ignoring the fact that Xavier did not accept the commission being foisted on them. Truly, nothing rude was allowed. As the only person in the room who might be able to understand the nonsense of what they were going through, Xavier frowned at you. You had no explanation to give for Baxter. Sighing, Xavier pressed their palms to their lower back, already feeling phantom strain from the job. I'll do it for you. It sounded about right. If a random pair of people had rolled in and began making similarly absurd demands, you couldn't imagine Xavier would have humored that. Still, victory was victory. Mr. Planner managed to pull it off somehow. Thank you so much. You are a lifesaver. Baxter retrieved the notebook from his jacket, not hesitating a second. Xavier matched the move. They had a notepad with order sheets. The wedding industry collaborators began the process of putting in a cake order. All the prior decisions were recounted, and Baxter described the pair in question as best as possible. You had a point of your own to contribute for being more familiar with Jude and Scott. It was made extra clear that Scott did not want a cake design laced and frilled out like the 18th century underwear. Xavier had a handful of follow-up questions, but it was nothing that required calling the couple. And then the baker slipped the order form into the pocket of their apron. Amazingly, your work there was done. Having a professional do the desserts really was a breeze. Thanks for stopping in at Zake. I'd better get started. They offered a grin as sweet as any slice of cake. Let's see each other again soon, okay? Not as customers, though. That would be nice, too. But also to hang after the shared nightmares all over. Baxter immediately came in with another throat clear, much harder than before. First off, you shouldn't call the Adams wedding a nightmare. Even if the circumstances aren't ideal, they have done what they could. And second, you were right the first time. Princeton is a friend of the couple as I am working with. We don't hang out together. Xavier's face went blank, and they paired it with ever and so slight tilt of the head. I'm not sure why you're saying that, but we've all got work to do. You two can explain it next time. I can wait. Not good. Xavier was using Baxter's own strategy against the both of you. He bristled. That simply wouldn't do. His firm insistence and exaggerated enunciation. Baxter repeated his standpoint. Regrettably, there won't be a next time. The three of us come together like this. Once the wedding has concluded, Princeton will have no reason to interact further. Oh? I could make a reason. I could get married. What if? What if we got married and then hired Baxter? Oh my god, that'd be trifling as fuck. That would be trifling as fuck just to get back at him. You said we wouldn't see each other anymore last time, and here I am again. Ooh, emo. Oh yeah, being around Baxter even more. I love that, you said sarcastically. You didn't know what to say to either of them. I love this one. I love this one so much. Your bluntness had Xavier cackling. They had no idea what the full context was, but the implication was apparent. Blanks could be easily surmised. Whoa! He looks positively evil. Baxter shot daggers at you without ever dropping his sparkling customer service smile. That only made it more intimidating. Oh, wonderful. Clearly the two of you will be marvelous friends. And that doesn't extend to you? Exactly. No, thank you very much for accepting this rush order, Xavier. You are such a help, but we need to be going. In the most roundabout way possible, he was kindly requesting Xavier get off his back already. Then he returned that back directly to them and strolled out the door without another word. Xavier watched his dramatic exit with his hands stuffed into the big apron pocket. An unexpected seriousness colored their normally bright features. For as playful as Xavier was, they were concerned about their acquaintance, work friend, normal friend. You didn't know where they stood with him. Xavier themselves likely didn't have a clear answer. Baxter was opaque that way. Good luck with all of this. You stared at them momentarily, but thought better of continuing that line of conversation. You gave your goodbyes, not knowing if it'd be for the last time or not, and headed after Baxter. Baxter was waiting for you by the car. He climbed inside as you approached. Before you were close enough to try speaking, you joined him inside. It was tense. Against all odds, being alone in the small space with Baxter had managed to become an even more uncomfortable situation. Seat and buckled. You waited for what he'd do. Baxter asked a simple question. Oh? Could you... Oh. Boo. Booty call. But it's not. It's professional. Could you enter the address of where you're staying? I can drive you there. Cautiously, you did as requested. Thank you. It went quiet again, until he was on the road past the bakery and out of the most traffic-heavy part of the city. Jude and Scott should be pleased to hear they have a lovely wedding cake. You assumed it would go that way. Of course, Baxter would dance right around what happened without acknowledgement. Not what happened in the bakery, not what happened before. Your entire relationship had become a looping series of feigned ignorance. Because you didn't want to talk to him about anything. That didn't mean you were happy about it. No, you weren't going to ignore it. Baxter, you have to talk to me. Baxter flexed his knuckles and a phony smile on his face flattened. It's almost over, Princeton. He continued in a whisper. I'm merely an employee of your friends. Please feel free to ignore me entirely. No, you're not. You're Baxter Ward. I know you even if you pretend that I don't. This isn't a social call. You can't be working 24/7. I'm not letting this go. He sighed in a dramatic fashion that was entirely opposed to the forced cordiality from seconds before. There's no other way. Let's use rock, paper, scissors to decide. What? Before you could doubt the logic of playing a hand-stealing game while driving, or question the maturity level of a highly professional planner next to you, he'd already made his move. It's going to be rock. I only choose rock. And you? Paper? At complete loss. You held out your hand like you wanted him to shake. He didn't take He didn't take your paper hand. He didn't make a fist either, but he did accept your answer. You win. Why did he tell me it was gonna be rock? Would you mind if I pulled over for a moment? It's about time I took a break. That's fine. Then we will talk. Are we gonna get a drink? Baxter shut the GPS off. You no longer knew where you were headed anymore, but he took some exit and got a place to park. It was mutually decided not to talk inside the car. It was too suffocating. Both of you wordlessly opened the doors. Outside was the same waterfront path where you saw fireworks together. That was how he found a place to park right away. He already knew the area. You could picture it with clarity. Baxter was by your side, so much younger, so much closer to you. Under the night sky and flashes of light, you'd been happy. You were certain he was happy then, too. That moment was over. The reality of a new present was stark under the unforgiving summer sun. Baxter was walking away from you, pointedly placing distance between you and him. He only faced you directly when he was out of arm's reach. Princeton, what a stunning coincidence stumbling into you here. And right when I happen to be taking a bit of time off work. What? What? Sir. Not him playing pretend. Not him role-playing during working hours. You'd finally gotten talking and it was pure sarcasm. How are you doing this fine afternoon, I'm not doing very well, Baxter. Baxter squeezed his eyes shut and pinched the bridge of his nose. Every fiber of his being, every instinct ingrained into him, insisted on escape, and yet he couldn't. Princeton, I apologize for what happened between us. I honestly do regret it. That wasn't a distant acknowledgement from the restaurant. His voice was strained and his words were harsh. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I was unable to keep my word and have bothered you yet again. I am thoroughly humiliated and have attempted to get in your way as little as possible. Though I'm unable to quit outright, I couldn't do that to Jude and Scott. Oh, okay. He's gonna be rude. We are both aware that I'm fully incapable of making you happy, but in 4 days you'll return to your life blissfully free of my presence in it. Please tell me what I can do for you. I simply don't know. He looks like a ghost right here. He ended his bitter ramble on that empathetic plea. Once again, the Baxter of 5 years ago appeared in your mind, though not the side of him you'd known best, who did whatever he could to leave a good impression. You were suddenly 18, standing in front of the home you grew up in and being told that your boyfriend flat out never wanted to speak to you again. Why had you tried? What did you think would be different? Baxter didn't want solutions or resolutions. 5 years on, he'd still rather never face something or someone ever again than deal with a situation that might hurt. I wanted you to care. I wanted you to treat me like a human being. I don't know either. Forget it, Pepe! There's nothing you can do that's obvious now. You stared at him silently. I want you to treat me like a human being. Fine, I will keep that feedback in mind. He answered coolly while running a hand through his hair. Oh, I believe nothing else is going to come of this break. Please allow me to take you home. Baxter didn't manage a hint of his usual smile, but he did restrain the acridness into a more business-like stoicism. You mumbled something. Not a real word, just a noise to stop him from looking at you like that. Great. So you returned to the car, and the drive resumed. Baxter said nothing else, not that you expected him to. You'd pushed past mere pleasantries with him and seen the results. It was too late to go back now. That left you time with your thoughts. You'd gotten a better grasp of Baxter's intentions, what was motivating him to act the way he had. Girl, do you know? 'Cause I don't know. But in terms of clearing the air, the clouds had only become murkier. Things were in motion, but it was as if you weren't going anywhere. Eventually, the destination did arrive, and you were turning into the suburbs. Baxter lined up with the side of the road rather than pulling into their driveway. He idled with his eyes dead ahead. Goodbye, Princeton. There was an audible click as Baxter unlocked the doors. Whatever, no. Bye. Got out and walked up the front before ringing the bell. Day's plans should have the whole rest of the group home and working on guest favors. Baxter's car lurched on the curb of your peripherals. Maybe he wanted to make sure you really did get inside, or maybe not. You could never guess with him. You started from the door being open. Hey, Princeton, you made it back in one piece. Physically, sure. Emotionally, not completely. Hi, Scott. While following your host inside, you stole a glance behind you. The road was clear. Wedding HQ was at full capacity in the living room. The supply count had tripled since yesterday. But most of it was candy. Presumably they'd gone down the treat aisle in the local grocery store and gotten a bag of every single one. The only living human you could see sitting in the pile of goods was Jude. He lifted a hand in greeting. Hi, Princeton. You're just in time. We're making lunch. The voices of your friends carried from the kitchen, as did the smell of hearty, fresh-cut vegetables. No, not the smell of vegetables. Cool. How did it go at the bakery? Xavier is going to make it, and we told them everything you said about it. The bakery was nice. It should be a good cake. Thank you. It was hard leaving it all in someone else's hands, but this is going to work. Knock on wood. He tapped his knuckles against his own head, chuckling. Thanks. You gonna help with this? Without stopping his busy work, Jude kicked a nearby bag of chocolates. Oh, sure, I can. Great, food first. Around the table, in between bites of homemade stew, Scott broke down what you missed. Hold on, guys. Forgot to close the door. Around the table, in between bites of homemade stew, Scott broke down what you'd missed. The actual favors were treat bags. But part of the job included creating decorated place setter with the guest names on it. That would indicate where everyone was meant to sit at the various tables. Technically, the attendee could take the fancy display with their name. The couple was under no illusions that anyone would want to. It was purely for presentation. Basically, the steps consisted of writing the name down in your best handwriting, applying decals on the basic nameplate, filling a bag of candy with what the person might like. When the meal was done, the full force of this party planning committee came together to tackle the trial of guest favors. No one would stop until it was done. A good chunk of the list had been checked off while you were away, and it was simple work, just time consuming. Luckily, there were plenty of people to do it. Many hands make light work, as someone said once said. Do you guys think I'm dyslexic? Because I don't know. Like, I'm skipping over words. I'm, like, switching words around. I don't know, man. Wait, that was Baxter who said it? You were most certain. That sounded like a phrase he'd use. You were driving yourself crazy. He happened to show up, and now your brain insisted on excavating every minuscule memory you had with the man. While you were there, Jude mentioned twice how you could throw some of every type of candy into each bag and call it a day without the fuss. Give me a second. Why is he in here? Why are you loud?
Because I just remember. And I don't know why your dog's in there.
Stop being loud. Stop being loud.
I gotta be loud. They told me to pop off. Why is your dog in here whining? Why are you?
Cause Jax, come on.
Whine into the mic. Yeah, talk to him. Talk to him, Jax. Too easy.
I can't stand him. Love him, but I cannot stand him. How I feel about Baxter. Love him. Can't stand him. You had to imagine neither it was the first instance of that objection came from you. You had to imagine neither was the first instance of that objection coming up. But each time Scott remained adamant that they should personalize the selection. If someone was coming to their wedding, they were important enough to have a treat to their tastes. Very deliberately. Cole's bag had been left empty until you'd gotten back. You were assigned to do that one yourself. Why? Why am I assigned to do it? I don't know this man. It was easiest taking candy from a baby in order to give those sweets to Cove instead. In the evening, the wedding group chat popped up with the new text. Another entirely casual, exceedingly normal update from Baxter Ward. It noted that you'd meet tomorrow morning to discuss today's accomplishments and plan next steps. What you accomplished, huh? Remembering it made you wince. Of course, that wasn't the part he was intending on discussing. During the process, some sparks flew between allies. It couldn't be helped. Debates over which treats were best was inevitable, and those always became serious. Overall, though, you were a unified force. Then, as night fell, your team effort brought about the completion of the collection. On one side of the room was a stack of stylish table settings, each with a thoughtfully compiled bag of candy sitting on top. On the other end was enough garbage to fill a dump truck. That was going to be a hassle. But Terry and Miranda were allowed to tap out when the favors were done. It was already getting late. For dinner, takeout was ordered, so nobody had to cook or clean another meal after hours of putting little favors together. No complaints there. For a while, the three of you would pretend the work was already over for real. No one mentioned the chaos that was waiting on one room away. But when everyone was full, Jude wandered back to the living room turned workshop. He heaved a sigh and tossed a random piece of trash in a garbage can. It was a drop in the ocean. The entire living room was a mess of wrappers, paper scraps, and undefinable crafting residue. Scott hovered nearby, his features drawn apologetically. The lighthearted atmosphere you shared as a team earlier in the day had shattered. All that remained was the fractured debris, and it went beyond pre-wedding jitters. After months of planning, Jude had reached a point where he wanted the preparation to be over. He was worn down, and little victories weren't able to lift his mood, and all he saw was what was still left. Meanwhile, Scott only seemed to become more invested, more concerned over how it came together and the deadline approached. As the deadline approached, you debated having some kind of intervention about the friction, but weren't sure you could pull it off in a way that would actually improve the situation. We can deal with this later, let's play something. Sure. Scott blurted out an agreement instantly. If Jude had asked him to do a backflip for his entertainment, Scott probably would have in that moment. Cool, wanna join? He tilted his head. You waved your hands back and forth. Thanks, but I'm gonna go to my room. The two had spent the entire day with other people. You weren't going to get in the way of them having some quality couple time in the final hour. Alright. They can have quality couple time in their bedroom. They asked if you wanted to play. Why don't you play a game with them? Play a few games and then give them that quality couple time. Jude gave you a shrug, half shrug, half smile. He was on to what you were doing. Have a good night, Princeton. Good night. Your hosts retired for the day, happier than they'd been since you first showed up. It was a relief. You made your own way to the guest room. The rest of the night would be yours. Fine, I'll call Cove to finally let him know the situation. Cove was going to be at the wedding as a normal guest. He couldn't make it sooner to join the wedding planning party committee. To be fair, he did arrive earlier for your mom's anniversary the last time you both had to visit the area. It was your turn to go before him. But after what happened that day, you could use a conversation with someone who'd be happy to hear from you. While waiting for him to answer, you wondered what he would have done if he had been there to see Baxter himself. Cove would not have spoken to this man. That's what Cove would have done. You got the feeling he would have made quite the scene. The line of thought was cut off by the phone line being picked up. Oh, that's what you look like now. What's up, guy? You look just like your dad. Hey, Princeton. I forgot what voice I gave Cove. Hearing that familiar voice brought a smile to your face immediately. Cove was one constant you could count on. His voice is not one, though. How are you? Is everything okay with the wedding? It was hard to say what he counted as okay given the extenuating circumstances of the planning. But that wasn't the topic you called to explain. You came right out with the shock of the century. Jude and Scott's wedding planner is Baxter Ward. Baxter Ward? Wait. He rolled the name over his tongue, catching the recognizable way it flowed. He said it before, but where and why? He gave him a second. That guy? He got it. Yes, that guy. And he's just there? Yes. What are you gonna do? That was the panic in his reaction. Of course he'd be nervous. This was about the worst possible time for that guy to materialize from the ether. I can't do anything except deal with it. He's the only wedding planner they'll get. The little noise didn't sound convinced. But he made an attempt to reassure you and himself. I'll be there soon. And you've got Terry and Miranda. Whatever Baxter does, it won't change that. Thanks, Cove. It helps to think about you... What? It helps to think about you being here with me. No, it doesn't. You can hear the gentle smile in Cove's voice. If you close your eyes, you can convince yourself he was by your side already. Why am I obsessed with Cove? I'm supposed to be obsessed with Baxter. It's gonna be okay. After the dust settled from that bomb, you two spent time chatting on other matters. But all too soon, you had to let the conversation end, and the promise of seeing each other soon, you hung up. Getting even a brief chance to speak with Cove was heartening. Everything was done, for the moment anyway. You finally had space to think about something other than wedding worries or Baxter Brothers. I love the alliteration. At least for a little while. The success rate of the plan was being ignored. An attempt was made. No matter how much you fought to banish Baxter from your mind, it didn't work. He was hiding in every dark corner, ready to make another unwanted appearance at the slightest disturbance. Basically, you didn't get much relaxation in. Then all of a sudden it was morning and you were off to proper second meeting with the planner. Everyone once again gathered in Baxter's office, waiting for him to arrive, and in turn, Jude and Scott were tense. The closer the wedding got, the further they were from gaining any semblance of peace. No matter how much they tried to unwind outside of the meetings, the moment they returned to the chic office, their discomfort skyrocketed. The way Scott's fingers were fidgeting in his lap, you almost believed that he was anxiously twisting the tension in the air. Miranda frowned, unable to disregard the worsening creases in her brother's brow. Hey, this rug reminds me of Baxter, from before anyway. She didn't elaborate for those not there before, and the awkward silence sent Terry into a fit of laughter. He pointed at the striped rug. That's so true. It's literally the first Baxter-like thing I've seen. The desk and chairs don't do it for you either? Okay. What about his business cards? His phone's all black too. His car's black and white. To no one's surprise. Well, yeah, he doesn't do that anymore. You looked at the floor skeptically. You sat quietly. You tried to ignore the conversation. Girl, I'm getting in on this conversation. Ooh, you get a point for that, Princeton. Terry's at 0. Hey, since when was this a competition? Since I awarded points. Terry nodded and his mouth pressed into a hard line. The three of you only lasted a few seconds before bursting into giggles at the silliness of the situation. Randy looked at her brother and Scott, noticing their lack of input on the subject. She knew they would need a little context to join in on the joke, but neither even acknowledged her presence. The couple was too absorbed in their own worries of their stony expressions to crack from her icebreaker. She folded her hands neatly in her lap and had no further attempts to chat. You and Terry shared a knowing glance and decided to stay quiet. Jude and Scott weren't in the mood. Why not? What happened? Shortly after, there was a knock on the door. Everyone snapped out of their thought bubbles and swiveled towards each other instead of moving to answer it. Hello? The door opened and Baxter cheerfully stepped into his office. His notepad was already open to a fresh page. Good morning and welcome back. Thank you for waiting. The round of greetings bubbled up from the planning party committee while Baxter moved through the room. He promptly sat in the rolling chair opposite the couch and clicked his pen out. Now that we're all here, we should begin. Let's go over where things stand and determine how to proceed next. Scott sat up straighter on the purple couch and stiffly nodded. Jude, in contrast, slouched further into the cushion. All right. So yesterday, an order was put in for your wedding cake. I can assure you it'll be ready on the day of your ceremony. You're welcome, babes. Thanks. Of course. Baxter carefully placed his pen tip to the notepad. His expression grew more serious all of a sudden. Speaking of cake, I must give a small disclaimer. This is a tradition called cake smashing. I'm not sure either of you are familiar with that. It really means one or both members of the wedding couple will slather cake into the face of their partner. I strongly suggest that you decide beforehand who, if either, will participate and to what degree of messiness. I cannot tell you how easy it is to sour the day by accidentally crossing a simple boundary line. There's a sad history of partners who find ignoring the wishes of their husband, wife, or spouse to be funny and realize far too late that it's absolutely not. Alarmed, Jude and Scott stared at Baxter. You were certain that neither had even considered any of those possibilities. Do you wanna? No, I don't. Do you? No way. Then can we not do it at all? Do we have that option? Of course you have the option, fool. It's your wedding. They make me upset with their wedding planning. I should be getting married, not them. Okay. Certainly. Certainly. We don't have to include any tradition besides your own. The couple simultaneously sighed in relief. They peeked at the other and shared an amused grin. The first time either had smiled all morning, Baxter stole a moment to jot down a note. I'm delighted we're all on the same page. Moving right along, you worked on guest favors and decorations, correct? Have you finished, or are you continuing with the task? We're done. We are done with the guest favors, but... Scott anxiously laced his fingers and pressed his palms together in his lap. His chuckle turned white. His chuckle? His knuckles turned white. Whenever he had anything to say about wedding plans, it became a trial of trying to avoid a disagreement. It's fine to explain what's on your mind. That's why we're all here. There's no way to there's no way to compromise or find a solution if you won't even have the discussion. That surprised you. Baxter's ability to confidently and kindly handle issues in this kind of setting was admirable, but also completely ironic. You knew what he was like on a personal level, but this was a big do as I say and not as I do kind of flag. Swallowing thickly, the defeat in Scott's expression didn't seem so dire anymore. He was more willing to take on the challenge with Baxter on his side. I also want more decorations. Specifically, the main thing for a reception, we don't have that. Centerpieces? Yes, that's what I meant. We need to buy all the parts, but if we kept the design simple, then I think we could be done before the wedding. After getting his thoughts out, Scott risked a glance at his fiancée. Jude closed his eyes tiredly and took a deep breath. Let's go to the store. It's gotta be done today. Awesome, cool. Can I go with you if you don't want to? And I can go with you if you don't want to. No, it's fine. I'll do it. Scott's joy vanished. Jude didn't hide an ounce of irritation in his voice. He was forcing himself to go along with this rather than taking any true interest, and he was making that fact crystal clear. Come on, Jude. She poked the side of his arm with a forceful jab, and Jude shooed her off. His frown worsened into a scowl. I already said I'd do it. I believe you're right, Scott. There will be room to pick out some materials that can be arranged into a lovely centerpiece. The process can be quite low effort and look wonderful, so I'm taking it that shopping for decorations will be the big task for the day. Scott watched Jude a few seconds longer before answering. He nodded slowly. Before the window of opportunity closes, is there anything that you would want to include, Jude? Anything that you'd enjoy? It doesn't have to be a typical wedding feature. There are no limits on what your ceremony or reception can have. Ooh, he's feisty. He folded his arms across his chest and wondered how deep Jude was about to dig into his heels. I don't want anything else. We're almost finished. Why add more on top of it? Okay, I mean, I see his point. But at the same time, you want the wedding to look nice. Randy sighed. Terry silently bit his lip. That was a track he'd gone down before repeatedly. It was always the same point of contention with Jude. But today Scott was emboldened. Even though, enough that he muttered his long held back grievance anyway. Tell him, Scott. If you don't have anything to contribute, can you at least stop trying to take away from what I think of? Ooh, eat him up. Jude's eyes snapped wide open. He swiftly pulled in his shock and replaced it with a distinctly unimpressed stare. I didn't take anything away from you, and I did contribute. In the planning stage, we're past that. It's done. Since there's time, we've been putting this thing together for weeks, hell, months in some ways. I've been to more parties than you, and I've planned more. You need to relax. Ooh. Jude went to brush back some of his curls, but his fingers tightened and dug into his scalp instead. Bewildered, his eyes flickered around the room. Scott doesn't even like parties. I don't get this issue. We have a planner now. We can figure this out. Why even have him if we're still going to be spending every hour before the wedding working on the crap? Jude's flash of anger dimmed as quickly as it had flared. He redirected his attention to Baxter apologetically. No offense, dude. It's not your fault. None taken on my account. The pinch of Baxter's features made you think he was fairly miffed on behalf of someone else's. Continuing the trend of speaking directly to the audience, Scott offered his side of the defense. Everything Jude said is true. I never planned a party, and yeah, I haven't been invited to many either, but we're the people making this one. I don't want it to be an awkward embarrassment. All of our friends and family are coming. I can't stand the idea that they'll leave wondering why the hell they even came in the first place. Scott began his explanations sad. But the longer he spoke, the more of his own frustration grew. And having a planner doesn't mean we can drop everything onto someone else. The entire point was so more could get done. At least that's why I wanted the expert to help. I'm not interested in half-assing it, and if Jude doesn't want to do anything else, he doesn't have to. But all I've said against him the entire time is he should stop making me feel guilty for not giving up. Jude chucked his own self-imposed pretense and shot back directly at Scott. You shouldn't have to do anything either. That's my whole point. But if you keep taking on stupid crafting projects, then I have to handle some of it for you. But it's not needed. Nobody cares that much. I care, even if I'm the only one. Oh, come on. That's not what I meant. Right, Jude. It really sounds like you're invested. That was the end of the discussion. This meeting was not going to plan, and the discomfort was reaching suffocating levels. Baxter leaned back against his chair, crossing his legs. Let's take a pause to breathe and assess what's happening here. There's nothing wrong with caring about your wedding. Oh, excuse me. However, it's a truly draining experience to create a massive and unimportant event from the ground up. That's why we have planners. Sorry, I'm not reading this in his voice. However, it is a truly draining experience to create a massive and important event from the ground up. That's why we have planners. So there should be an understanding for that as well. Now, as the expert here, I must ask an important question. Both Jude and Scott nodded. Their gazes become glued to Baxter, anything other than each other. Slowly, Baxter untwisted himself and leaned forward, almost lifting out of his seat. What are your opinions on bowling? What the hell? Bowling is a casual sport popular with almost all ages. No, because we went bowling, and you can't do that. That's our thing. Does he know what bowling is? Dude, he knows what bowling is. He's asking, what was your important question? You can't be telling me people have bowling at their weddings. Baxter considered the remark with a smirk. He tapped the side of his cheek twice. No one has ever done that in any of the weddings I've helped plan. But I wouldn't be surprised if some couple out in the world set up a game or two of lawn bowling for their guests. Perhaps even held the reception at a bowling alley. Interesting, though, that's not what I had in mind. I wish to invite the 5 of you to bowl with me today. Right now, preferably. My treat. Perplexed, Scott... Oh my gosh. The fireworks have started. Perplexed, Scott pushed his glasses up. He's at a loss for words. I'd do it. Huh? What? I said I'd do it. You would? Jude's answer confused Scott further. He gauged the room and Terry offered him a thumbs up. I love bowling. Sounds fun. Bowling time. I don't get it either, but sure, whatever you want. You shrugged. You didn't know what to do. Sounds fun. Yeah. Terry put forward a high five that you gladly accepted with a loud slap. Just about everyone was thrilled by the prospect of getting out of this office and stretching their legs. Scott retained the final say. He tightened his already taut ponytail. Alright, we can go. We can go do that? Splendid. I know the perfect place. Okay, I'm going to end stream here. The fireworks have started and I need to go comfort my dog. But thank you guys so much for being here for this stream. I really appreciate it. Let's see, next stream, I don't know, but I'll make a post about it in my Discord, I guess. I don't know. I need to start getting on a schedule again since I'm not in school right now. And yeah. But again, once again, thank you guys for being here. I hope you have a nice rest of your night, week, month, year, and life. And I hope to see you in the next stream. Bye.